You're listening to the Impact Driver Podcast, a production of the Climbing Business Journal, where we explore the ideas, people, and pressures shaping the route setting industry. I'm your host, Holly Chen. I am a route setter, journalist, and contributing writer at the CBJ. Today's episode is brought to you by Rooney, Trango, the Climbing Wall Association, Cascade Specialty, and Kilter. Hey, Rylan, tell me where you're calling from today.
I'm calling from Gun Barrel, Colorado, which is just outside of Boulder.
Awesome. Do you want to tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do? Just kind of the, who, what, when, where, why of your climbing and your setting careers.
For sure. My name is Rylan Marshall-Meistrich. I'm the director of setting for Movement's Colorado gyms. I've been climbing since 2004 and setting since 2005. Started both pretty much back to back here in Colorado at a gym called Rockin' and Jammin', which is like
nice.
Maybe the second gym that ever opened in Colorado. So a storied franchise, as it were.
Absolutely. I sat there now, and the walls are the same walls, and the draws are still really far apart.
Yeah. That main lead cave is ahead of its time. It's
Absolutely,
like,
I
still
agree.
a pretty cool wall, but
yeah. But setting on that thing in a harness, wow, your back's going to be hurting for the next day.
yeah. Well, we used to do it off of like 40-foot extension ladders.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know, I was like 20 at the time. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I look back on it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, God. Oh, the good old days. Or maybe not the good days, the kind of dangerous days, I guess.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about your setting history. Like you said, you started setting at Rockin' and Jammin', and now you're at Movement. Kind of what are the years like between those two?
Yeah, so I started at Rockin' and Jammin' in 2005. Pretty typical, like Sunday nights in exchange for a free membership type of deal. And I worked there until 2014. Eventually, became the head setter there, and then in 2014, I moved to San Francisco. I got a job at Planet Granite, and that was like the first real route setting job. That was like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Relative to Rockin' and Jammin', the gym was like massive. And so that was like 2014 to 2015, pretty short. I just couldn't live in the Bay. Not my vibe. And so then I moved to Tahoe, California, and worked at a really small gym there called High Altitude Fitness until 2017. And I got a job at Movement Boulder as the head route setter there in 2017. So I moved back to Colorado, and I've been there ever since.
Awesome. You want to tell me a little bit about comps that you set for? I know you're pretty big in the comp circuit, and you can't really think about comps without seeing your name pop up somewhere.
For better or worse.
In a good way. Tell me a little bit about the comps you've set for.
Yeah, when I moved to California to work at Planet Granite, they had just hired a new director of setting, Brett Johnston, and he kind of got me into the comp scene. I had known about it maybe tangentially at the very end of the Rockin' and Jammin' days, but it wasn't until I moved to California that I actually started participating and working the way up, doing the regionals and divisionals and all that. And yeah, so that was over 10 years ago. And since then, I've been very fortunate to get a lot of opportunities with USA Climbing. I've set all the nationals except bouldering nationals. It's the only one I haven't done. And I was able to achieve my level 5 certification in 2022, 21. Nice. It was right during the COVID time, so it was a little disjointed. And I've just been plugging away doing that for a while.
Nice. Yeah. I have so many more questions about comps that will come up later, but I think kind of wrapping up the intro here, last but not least, is there any hobbies, fun facts, or, achievements that you kind of want to tell the audience about? Doesn't have to be climbing related.
Yeah. Kind of my side side quest. I have like a little recording studio in my basement with like some drums and guitars and like a little 4-track cassette recorder. I've like played music and been in bands since middle school. So that's kind of like my other output aside from climbing and setting has always been making music. I don't do anything with it. It's just like my little secret hobby in the basement.
Nice. I might come back to you in a few months about, putting together an intro track for another podcast. So we'll see about that. I have so many questions because I know nothing about music. Yeah, I'm just like, I listen to pop sometimes. That's about it.
I wouldn't say I know a lot about music, but I love it, and I've been playing it for
more than me.
Like 3/4 of my life.
Yeah. This episode was brought to you by Trango. For decades, Trango has made gear for every kind of climbing, including sport, trad, bouldering, alpine, ice, and mountaineering. Learn more at trango.com. So today I want to talk to you about something kind of a broad topic, right? I think the whole topic can be distilled down into who do we set for, all right? And I want to kind of start with some basic definitions here to kind of help establish a baseline, and just hang with me because some of these questions are going to sound real basic, okay? I think my first one is, what is our job as a route setter? The difference between commercial setting, competition setting. Is there something else, other than these big two? Like, what is it? Tell us about that.
That's a great question. It's oftentimes the most like basic questions that are the hardest to answer or actually have like the most behind them. So I think that it's pretty safe to say there's kind of like these two buckets. There's like commercial setting and there's competition setting, and anything else might be some like offshoot of either one of those. So that's probably like the two areas that I think about the most, or that have like the most like established difference to them. As far as the job of route setters, I think for commercial setting, it's pretty nuts and bolts, right? It's like providing an environment for people to climb, whether that's like seasoned climbers who are looking to train and stay in shape, or it's people who are just doing it because it's fun and their friends do it, or whatever it is. Like, it's a pretty big umbrella that we operate under in that sphere. But I would say that like the job of commercial setters is to serve the community that climbs in the gym. And I would say for competition setting, it's kind of similar, but ultimately it's like creating an environment for results to happen. And that is like, providing, in my opinion, open-ended challenges that are up to the competitors to sort out and apply their own skills to. And as my friend would say, things will happen.
Do you think it's the job of a competition route setter to separate the field? Is that kind of, I feel like I can kind of see the argument that it's up to the competitor to separate the field sometimes.
That's more what I tend to think these days, is that the competitors will separate themselves. Like, if we do our job and provide like diverse climbing and like opportunities for success or failure, everything else kind of falls into place. I think when we get too focused on results, or trying to create a result, or trying to specifically challenge like individual competitors, we lose track of everything. And that's typically when like disaster strikes. So I
agree.
I'm of the frame of mind that we just kind of like put things on the wall that we think are challenging and let the climbers either succeed or fail.
I like that. It's almost like designing a skate park or a golf course. You're not going like, well, this rail over here, it's going to challenge this one skater. You just like, here's the canvas, give it a shot.
Yeah. And that's like, maybe the longer that I've been in the competition world, the more like, especially coming up in the youth setting, like the very first nationals that I set, Colin Duffy was a youth D, right? And so like, I've been setting for him like literally his entire climbing career. And just seeing like the variation that happens from event to event, or from year to year, or maybe even from day to day, is like, to your golf course analogy, like I could go to the golf course tomorrow and have a really great game, and I could go to that same golf course the next day and just like totally suck. And so there's so much that the athlete brings into the event that we can't account for or control or manipulate. And so we just have to like kind of let them figure it out.
I like that perspective. Yeah, I'm not going to go to the golf course designer and say, hey, I played a poor game and it's your fault. Yeah. Okay. So now that we're talking about audience, you said that you set for Colin Duffy through the years. He is an audience of sorts. What does it mean to set for an audience? Like the difference between setting for Colin Duffy versus setting the kids' room in the gym that provides birthday party climb for the first time climber. Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think this is like the true skill of a good route setter, is being able to identify that audience and provide something that's in the scope of what that audience might be looking for. Mm-hmm. And knowing, like being able to read the room would be the phrase.
Yeah.
And so it's like in different contexts, right? Like we can continue on this Colin Duffy example. Like if I'm going to set a training camp before an event and he's participating, then I might give him very specific challenges that I think, based on previous performances, would like highlight some of his weaknesses, right? Because in that environment, it's like, it's okay to fail. You kind of want to fail. Like you need to be shown what you need to work on for the next event. Whereas like if it's an actual event, I'm not going to think about him. I'm going to think about the field in general. And so it's kind of like you have like an adjustable magnification on your lens, and you need to be able to like zoom in and zoom out. And if it's like the birthday party room, I'm zooming in on like climbing doesn't really matter. I'm just putting a ton of holds. Maybe I'm making a cool pattern so that kids see it and they're like, oh, look, a dinosaur or whatever. And being able to shift in and out of that perspective, I think is super important. And honestly, a skill that a lot of setters don't have or don't think is a skill. They think it's like, oh, I have to set the birthday party room. Like, just grab like all the weird Lego holds and bolt them onto the wall, whatever.
Yeah, there's that one setter that always calls out sick when we have to set the birthday party room. You're like, I see you. I see what you're doing over here. Okay, now the in-between, because there's Colin Duffy and then there's the birthday party folks. There's the majority of the route setters are serving, the widest customer base, which is anyone who climbs V0 through, say, V12, right? Especially in a town like Boulder or Denver, where there's a huge climbing population, we are serving a wide range of people. So we are serving climbers. And so in your definition, what does it mean when we're setting for a climber? Like, what does that entail for the big, the population? Is it, we're talking about enjoyment? Are we talking about like progression or accessibility or, in the number side, are we talking about like member retention? Is this something else that I'm not talking about here at all?
It's like as many things as you want it to be.
Yeah, it's a broad audience, right?
Yeah, and so, like I think using Colorado is kind of like a microcosm. There's a good number of gyms that stretch from like South Denver into Boulder, and a lot of them are pretty close together and see a lot of sharing of members, of climbers. And so like each gym or each like region kind of has its own identity maybe, and like the way that we would set for people in Boulder, what we think that they would like, what we see them asking for or like repeating the most on the wall is like going to be maybe a little bit more straightforward training, rock climbing, I'll say classic rock climbing. Whereas like in Denver, especially in some of like the bouldering only gyms, like it's a little bit different clientele, and some of the people there are like maybe younger and more into like the comp style or modern style movement, where the facilities are newer and have had like those types of resources, and the community has been kind of shown that style since the beginning. And so, for a movement setter, if you go into Boulder and you go into Baker and you go into Rhino, that's kind of like three different groups. But I do think that there is like a common denominator of enjoyment, that like enjoyment and progression aspect of it. Like we want to challenge people. Climbing is challenging. I think that's why we all like to do it, is because you can feel really good at it and you can be very humbled at it. And oftentimes that happens within like 5 minutes of each instance, So I think go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's like finding the right balance between like, I know I can do this, but not quite yet, or like I've done this, now I feel like the next step of the progression is right there, that I can reach it, not quite, like that little balance of, this is challenging, but not so challenging that it's going to shut me down forever and I never want to try it again.
For sure. And like being able to dial in that balance is super challenging. And so like when we talk about enjoyment, that's kind of like hard to imagine, like what you like and what I like could be drastically different. But there are ways, I think, if you're setting like a coordination move and it's like V5, and that's kind of like a lot to ask for that grade, or for maybe our target audience is like newer climbers. Maybe the coordination part's not the hardest part of the boulder. Maybe that's actually the easy part, and the hard part is like grabbing 2 crimps at the top or something, whatever, like a little bit more straightforward challenge. Stuff like that is like how you can build in that enjoyment where like you see progress or success on the like unique learning side of it. And then you're met with the challenge on the thing that like, you should be good at, or how to like get good at.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a hard balance to strike. And like, there are days when I'm like, oh, I have this dialed. And then there are days like, oh my God, I can't do my job. I quit. I'm done. This episode was brought to you by the Climbing Wall Association. The CWA offers certifications for route setting, climbing wall instruction, and work at height to help you level up in your career. Learn more at cwapro.org. Yeah. You brought up, in the past, in our previous conversations, about sometimes setters are not quite in tune with the setting for the climber. Who else would we set for if not the climber?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's like, we set for ourselves, right? And there's like 2 different pathways that I see for that. There's setting for yourself, the climber, and wherein you put moves on the wall that you are interested in climbing, or that you try to set the route that you would come into the gym and be like, that thing, I'm going to tie in, I'm going to try that thing. Yep. And then there's setting for ourselves in the like capital R route setting realm, where it's like, I'm going to try to affix these materials to the wall in a way that have never been done before, or like do something that's like technically really demanding of my skill set to feed that like route setter part of us. And I tend to think that going down that pathway is not the best way to go. I think that oftentimes can just, like, the more prescriptive we get, the less appeal we have to the people that are coming in the doors.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of want to break this down, because I want to talk about the first part where you say we're setting for ourselves as a climber. Let's say I go in today and I don't feel very inspired. So I like slab and I like balance and crimping, right? So I'm going to set myself a project. I'm going to set, a V9 slab that I know is going to be hard for me, fits my box extremely well. But I am a rock climber at heart. I like to go outside on the weekends and climb real rocks. So you're saying that setting for ourselves is not always a bad thing, because it does still serve the climber? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think, like I see myself as a climber. And so if I'm setting something for me, then therefore I am serving other climbers.
I see. Okay. And when I'm setting for the capital R route setter, which I really like that description, big route setting, capital R route setter, let's say I'm going in there and I'm putting these fiberglass in a nice appealing pattern. I am jibbing them in odd ways that maybe not the most comfortable, maybe not the most, appealing. I'm trying to push something in the craft. When does that become a problem for us? And when does that become a problem for the members?
My cynical answer is almost immediately. I tend to be like, to see it a lot more from the member perspective or from the climber perspective, partly because that's a majority of my job, is to look at it from that level. And so like, yeah, I'm like, the second we start doing weird stuff is the second I'm like, oh, who's going to like this? Are people going to come in and be like, oh, cool, I get to like jam my thumb into an underclean pocket and then like dyno off of it. Whoever thought of this is a genius. Or are they going to be like, what is this? Like, I can't even do this. I don't want to do this. Like, I'm paying for stuff that I'm never going to use. Like, why am I here? So like I said, that's my cynical answer. I do think that there is, like, we need to fuel ourselves. Otherwise, we might as well be like employed by like the boards to just set board climbs, right? And so I think where it becomes a problem is when we lose sight of how other climbers are going to engage with it. So like we can still pursue these ideas that we have, or this need to be like a little bit more cheeky or creative or whatever word you want to use. I think pursuing that is very important to keep us engaged, to keep the customers like having a little bit of question marks here and there, like needing to learn new skills or be exposed to new situations. But the second we stop thinking about what someone's going to think when they come up and see that, I think we're lost.
Okay, I see. Okay, that kind of leads me into another question about, it's like, to conceive these maybe uncomfortable, maybe weird things that are more for ourselves than for the customer base, it does require a little bit of creativity, right? It doesn't matter if you think route setting is an art or design or something else entirely. Route setting does require a little bit of creativity. So do you think that creativity can be inherently at odds with usability? Like when we push something forward, let's say the introduction of volumes, the introduction of macros or dual text or fiberglass big pieces, like these are all products of somebody's creativity and somebody's innovation. So where do you think that line is drawn? And I like that you said when we lose sight of who we're setting for. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. Like music is kind of my other passion, and so a lot of the metaphors that I make tend to relate to that, but I like to think about it as music. And you can be creative in terms of what you play, and you can be creative in terms of how you play it. And you can also be creative in terms of like what you use to play it. So what I mean is like, I could write a song that's in a very basic time signature and it's just an acoustic guitar, but maybe like the sound that I get on it or how I manipulate the recording could be different or unique or weird or whatever. Or I could write something that's like in a very esoteric time signature and very challenging technically to play, but it's with a piano and it sounds like something regular that we're familiar with. And what I mean by that is like creativity is a very broad thing, and you can be creative in very subtle ways. Sometimes I would argue that being subtly creative is more challenging than doing something like big or loud or splashy. So how we blend that is like, sometimes we need to just be content with that creativity being something that other people don't notice. Like, oh, I snuck in this little V5 crimp ladder between these giant volumes, and like you never bash your elbows, and like it fills the space on the wall, and there's like an extra boulder that we normally wouldn't have set. Like that could take a lot of skill to put on the wall, and people climb on, they would never think that it required much effort. So to me, like that could be just as creative as the climb that's on the wall with the giant volumes and like the crazy move that no one's ever done before.
Whoa, okay, that's a really cool example of both the music one and the V5 crimp ladder, because now I'm thinking, I'm a writer outside of route setting, and you also have to be creative in writing. Like I can play with the difference between using an em dash and a semicolon that changes the cadence of a sentence, but I cannot change how a period or a comma is used to that much of a degree, and if I do, it's going to start affecting the readability of a sentence. I might have to, you're just giving me a whole new idea to write about here.
My wife's a writer, and she's probably downstairs, and like her ears just perked up. You're like, oh, a comma is a comma, but if you use 3 of them in a row, now what is it?
Now
she does like poetry and like hybrid work, so this kind of like bending of genre or like the foundation or the fundamental tools that we use is like all in her wheelhouse. So I've learned a lot from her in terms of like how to be creative with like standard or like typical things.
All right, we're gonna have to get your wife on the podcast too. It's gonna be a whole new episode about how route setting and writing merge together. Okay, I'm losing track of my. Okay, I want to talk about that V5 crimp line that you said, because I like that example too. It's kind of the end of the day kind of creativity, in my opinion, and it's actually, I think, a lot of technicality as much as creativity, because you need to understand movement well to be able to fit that crimp line into this like smash of volumes without bashing your elbows or your knees. And usually that for me comes up at the end of the setting day where you're looking at the wall. You're like, okay, we got half an hour before forerunning and warm up. We have, we want 20 boulders up. We only have 19. Where can the last one go? And then you're like, well, that's a blank space. But if I'm going to get the novice route setter with 1 year of experience into that terrain, I mean, this is kind of a generalization, but you might get that elbow bashing climb because they haven't quite figured out or understood the technical aspect of fitting a climb into a tight space. But if we got you in there and we said, we need this, soul set something, pick the crimp, pick whatever you need. But that is a fair amount of, oh, goodness. I like that. I like that perspective on creativity. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of that is born from like back in the Planet Granite days, we just set so much. Like we'd set 3 lead routes per day at the like baseline. And so like you just had to set so much that you needed to be able to like turn off your brain a little and have a route that you can just like put up without needing to do anything. Like we call it like a light bucket. It's just like a bunch of like single hand crimps and some feet. And you just kind of like brain off. Maybe you set it top down so you're not even like hauling it. And you just put the holes where there are spaces. And you do that over enough time and like you kind of like develop this like filter that you can apply to the wall and be like, oh yes, I could go here and then it goes back over there. And like I only need 10 crimps and then I'm done.
I think there's also another side to this is that if I gave you, $10,000 of the best holds and macros and volumes, it's easy to be creative. But if I walked you into the, right now at the Spot Thornton, but an old rockin' and jammin' hold room, and I said, here are some holds that are very smooth, acid washed, and have been here for 20 years, but we need a 511 on the lead wall. Can you still do that with these like older resources, with, maybe not the shiniest, flashiest thing, but just single hand crimps? I think that's another side to creativity as well. It's just like, what can you make of older resources or less than ideal resources?
Like necessity is the mother of invention is the phrase.
Exactly.
That I think about a lot.
Yeah, I like that. Another guest, Andy Nelson, has talked about this too. Necessity is the root of invention. I like that. This episode is brought to you by Rooney. Out of Norway, Rooney makes chalk and apparel for climbers, inspired by YouTuber Magnus Midtmo. Learn more at rooney.com. Okay, I kind of want to jump to the other side where we talk about creativity as a form of pushing route setting as a craft forward technically. Because there are things that only route setters notice that climbers don't, like you said, right? And some of them are small. Like if I walk into a comp and I see a messy tape box, I notice that. But it's unlikely that your average gym member is going to be like, wow, that route setter just did not tape this placard very well. But I will see that. Or like I go into the gym and I see the color scheme is going like black, blue, black, blue, black, blue. And I'm like, do you not have any other colors in your hold room? Why is it in this like just black, blue color scheme? And these are just kind of not the technical aspect. These are just kind of maybe the visual aspect that only a route setter notices. But I think that when you are pushing that standard and that technical craft forward, you are only going to create things that a route setter might notice. So when you do make movement that only a small subset of highly trained route setters can notice and is widely potentially misused by the member base, is that still success, or are we just kind of, I don't know. It's another broad question for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The challenge there is that we're working in a medium that is not like impermanent. That's it, right? So like, the phrase like, oh, this person is like a writer's writer. And the stuff that they put out, like you kind of have to know a little bit about writing in order to enjoy it. That's fine because books last forever and you can always go back to them and analyze them, or like if they're not popular in the moment, there's still like time for people to discover it and like analyze it and decide that was good or bad. Whereas like your climb is up for 4 to 6 weeks, right? And so when we take those chances, it's not like people can come back like, oh, that blue 7 that you set 2 years ago, like it was just ahead of its time. And like, I didn't understand it now, but now it's great, right? It's like gone. So it's almost like we have to build that in to our process and maybe try to make those iterations in smaller percentages rather than like always swinging for the fences or like reaching for the stars or whatever metaphor you want to use. Like we need to understand like that kind of innovation to push our craft forward needs to happen slowly. Otherwise, the people who climb on it aren't going to get it and they're not going to like it. But if we can like give them these elements over a longer time scale, then it's like they don't really notice that they're being pushed to understand these things that maybe they wouldn't have understand before or been like intimidated by.
Yeah, it's not like a classroom that's studying, the Scarlet Letter or Homer is going like, anyways, we're now going to look at this blue V5 that Holly put up 2 years ago. We're going to study it today. And I think the next question here is, how much does pushing the craft forward depend on the gym climber keeping up? You're saying that we need to push them forward bit by bit to help them get accustomed to it. And it's almost in a not noticeable scale that they're kind of being pushed forward in the way that we're pushing route setting forward. But does that mean that if the gym climber doesn't follow, then we have inherently failed at pushing the industry forward?
Well, my first question would be, is advancing of technical craft the same as pushing our industry forward? And
I see.
I think that craft and profession are maybe two different buckets. And we're not always like depositing equally into both of those. And so pushing the craft forward, maybe that like increases our understanding of the materials or resources or movement or whatever. And then pushing the profession forward is like a lot more nuts and bolts, right? That has to do more with like businesses and like schedules.
Professionalization.
And, like, all that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And
okay.
those can be like
Let's
very
take
different.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I don't have anything else. So.
That's okay. Let's take an example. The introduction of volumes in rock climbing gyms, or wood in general, just these bigger features. I've been told by a few route setters who were around during the introduction of volumes that initially that was a kind of, the members were like, what is this? Like, what is this crap? Like, I want my single hand crimps and my pockets and things that I find on quote unquote outdoor rock. What is your opinion on that? Like the introduction of volumes as a form, is that a form of pushing the craft forward or is that a form of pushing the industry forward?
Right. So this is a great example. And, at first when you start getting volumes, like the question was always like, is it on? Right. Like maybe I set my V7 using the volumes and then you set like a V4 that climbs through. Like, well, do we use them as the same? Like, at this time, like maybe we're not even using monochromatic holds and we're just taping. So like there's a little bit of anarchy in terms of what is being communicated. And, then that was like, okay, well now we have like signs on the wall that say like features are on, volumes are on, and anything, you can touch it, you can use it. And even then it's like people don't read signs, so there's no point. And then like the next step is like, okay, well, maybe we only buy volumes in a color that we don't have holds for. So like, we don't use black hold color, but we use only black volumes. And so now people are like visually kind of taught to be like, oh, this is just like part of the wall. Like anybody can use it, even if I'm on orange holds or blue holds or whatever. So that would be like a good example of how we like progress in terms of like showing the climbers what we're trying to do and making it so simple that they can like focus on trying to solve the problem of climbing it rather than solve the problem of like interpreting it.
Okay, I see. And another example, recently we're seeing a lot of VTF holds, right? That's lighter, it's easier to haul. I see that as pushing the profession forward because it helps sustainability of like the profession. It helps with, now I can put up the sick comp rig with all of these nice big features, but I'm not going to break myself hauling it without a lift. I can strap all of them to my bucket and have it be the same weight as, 2 large PU macros. I see that as pushing the profession forward. Do you see it the same way?
I do. Yeah. And I think anything that can like eliminate the literal or metaphorical headaches is like pushing the profession.
I see. Okay. I love this distinction. Mm-hmm.
Right. And like something like your example could be both, right? We're seeing some holds now that are like designed by route setters. and have like so much functionality that like tiny little turns can like drastically change the difficulty, and they're much more subtle. So like that's doing both, right? It's like a nicer material, it's easier to work with, and it allows for far more manipulation by the setter to achieve a desired result.
Yeah. The widespread uses of jibs, in my opinion. I like even when I started setting like less than 10 years ago, I didn't see that many jibs. And then now it's like a pretty standard thing to find a bucket in every color in every hold room. Yeah. This episode was brought to you by Cascade Specialty. Since 1999, Cascade Specialty has installed and refurbished top quality flooring for both rope and bouldering areas. Learn more at cascadespecialty.com. Okay, I want to talk, since we're talking about, the evolution of materials, is kind of a great segue into looking at the way setting has evolved and the way our perspective of it has evolved, because what is considered good now may not be the same 10 years ago. It's probably not going to be the same 10 years in the future. Like I listened to a podcast with Shauna Coxey, and she was talking about how these impressive comp movement that she was doing early in her comp career are not that difficult. For the time, it was novel, so a lot of people didn't know how to do it. But she boiled it down to these comp movements were essentially about V4 sometimes. I don't believe that entirely. I think it's harder than V4. But I do kind of get her message of like, when these movements are introduced, they're not cutting edge in the same way as they are now, because we're now pushing not just the complexity, but also the difficulty, the physical difficulty of some of these problems. So when we look at the idea of like setting for the user versus setting for the setter or for ourselves, capital R or not, can this perspective potentially be generational? Can this be maybe going down the same path of some old curmudgeon outdoor climbers saying these parkour things are not real climbing,
I think we're at the high water mark of like coordination moves, and I think that's only going to trend downwards, and it's going to go back into like static, straightforward climbing, and then it's going to come back into like coordination. Like it's all cyclical.
Mm-hmm. It's like fashion trends and how there's like they go in a circle too. Low-rise jeans are back to cool again. Like
we're
really
dressing like it's 1994.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I really don't want a low-rise jean, please. No. But this actually brings up kind of another question. It's like, let's say I look at this double clutch in 1990 and I say, oh yeah, that's way too big of a lock off. This cannot be locked off. So this line in my head does not go, right? So move on, go to the next boulder, find something else. And now this generation comes up and they see this kind of double clutch because they've come up in the comp scene. Where do you think that's going to go next in outdoor climbing? And does that mean that our jobs at route setting and shaping the user is eventually going to shape the community as a whole, because now they are looking for new lines? Like we're, a recent example of the mellow film that I watched is Connor Herson doing a pogo move on a crack climb. That, like, I don't want to sound like a noob here, but that kind of did blow me away in the theater. I was like, oh my God. Like, where do you think that's going? And is that are we just like the masterminds? No, that sounds way too cocky to say.
Yeah, are we creating the trend or are we chasing the trend?
Ooh.
And I think that it can be both. I don't know, what do you think?
I think the cool people will create the trend. For me, I can only chase it. I don't think maybe give me another 10 years, I might create a trend and then I can build my entire reputation around how I created one trend. But I think for the majority of the population in route setting, we are chasing the trend, because I don't, I'll see something, the face out move that was kind of, all of a sudden it's on Instagram and now everyone's trying to recreate it in their gyms, and it's broken 10,000 different ways by a member because no one knows what you're trying to do. That's a trend that I chase for a hot minute. Or I remember seeing, there was a gym in New York called Method that just has really beautiful stacks of volumes and jibs, and they put them all up in a almost art installation style, but they're all climbable. So I tried to make that for a second too. I think I can only chase the trend, but Do you think it's only cutting edge setters who can be creating trends?
I would argue that the people we think are cutting edge are probably just duplicating something else that they have seen or expanding on something that they have seen. I think that's how, like, again, like music writing, any kind of art form, you can look at that where you take what people do and then you add something to it. And
steal like an artist.
Yeah, exactly. And at some point, there's like a threshold. And when you add past that threshold, all of a sudden it's something new. And people see the new thing and they don't really understand where it came from. And the person who's creating it's just like, lips are sealed like, oh, well, I just actually forgot to put a hold on and now you dino and now it like looks revolutionary, but I was actually trying to do like this other thing.
I just forgot to put a hold on. I think that's happened to me where I was like, yeah, I forgot to put a hold on there. And someone's like, yeah, I read that as a thumb press. And I'm like, that is exactly what I intended.
And I think maybe to extrapolate on your point, I don't think it's wrong to try to emulate things that we see. And I think that as long as you approach it with the mindset of like, you're not trying to like copy paste the thing, right? You're like, maybe I'm trying to get this face out, and in the process of trying to figure out how it works, I'm naturally applying my own sauce to this recipe. And it's going to be something that's slightly different or unique or not the thing that I was trying to set out to duplicate. So like, I think duplication is wrong. I think emulation is okay.
That's a good distinction, duplication versus emulation. Like if I see a piece of writing that I really enjoy and I want to create something like this, it's not like I'm just going to open the book here and start typing exactly the same lines, but I might be like, well, how did they play with dialogue? How did they play with, color and symmetry in this passage? And I want to try to recreate that in a different way, but in my own, style. I just like the way that they use dialogue as a, something or another. But I do want to expand on that a little bit further, just taking the example of my recreating the face out boulder, emulating. In a regular setting day, we have a job to do, right? Like we do have to end up with 5 to 7 boulders at the end of the day for the customer base. We can't be just still churning away at 7 p.m. with the barrier still up. I want to take the time to try to learn this face out movement. Or even, like you said, apply my own sauce to it, but I still have a job to do. I think that's kind of where the progression of a setter can kind of get smushed a little bit. If that's not the right word, but it's the only word that I can think of right now, where I want to learn something new, but I have to learn it on the job, because it's not like I can, for the average setter, it's not like they can just play on the job. Do you know what I mean? Like how do you try to reckon that with like trying to push our own progression as route setters but still doing the job?
Yes, I think that with the ease of access to Instagram reels or live streams of comps, and most gyms have pretty awesome resources, like I think a lot of route setters are learning backwards, and they're trying to start out by doing these really complicated things, and they're glossing over setting that V5 crimp trainer that we talked about before.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, the solution and the way that I try to like educate setters is to like really understand the basics. And when you can have that base of confidence of like, I know I can set these 3 straightforward boulders in like 45 minutes. So I'm going to take 2 hours to try this weird boulder. And like, that's where I'm going to play and experiment. And I know that I can have that time because I can still successfully set other things in a short amount of time. And if you don't have that foundation of like technical ability or just like understanding how to do like the very basic things well, then you're just burning time. If it takes you 2 hours to set every boulder that you put on the wall, like that's bad. But if you spend 2 hours on one and then you can set others in like 30 minutes, now you've like opened up that area to play or to develop within the workday while still being able to achieve what's expected of you.
I agree. Yeah, I think a friend of mine said, you can't learn how to make steak if you don't know how to make mac and cheese. Like, you're not going to jump to the most complicated dish in the kitchen when you still can't make mac and cheese from a box.
Right. And maybe you could learn how to make that one steak, but you can't do it in someone else's kitchen, or you can't do it with a different cut of meat. Or as soon as you do get asked to do the mac and cheese, you're like, what? I only know how to replicate this one dish.
I only know how to make
I can
steak.
only set the face-out boulder, guys. I'm sorry. That's like the only thing that I learned how to do.
It's just on the top of my resume. Holly Chen, face-out boulders only. Okay, now we're talking about progression. This episode was brought to you by Kilter, designer of holds, macros, and the Kilter board. Kilter also provides adjustable walls and custom flooring. Learn more at settercloset.com. In an industry like this, where I feel like only recently it's starting to become a real profession, is progression the same definition across everyone? Like, is your progression of the industry same as my definition of what progression means? Like, how do you think this industry is progressing? Are we all going towards the same goal, or are we just kind of branching in different branches of the tree and all going in different directions because we have different definition of what an improvement of our craft and our industry?
Right. This is a pretty fascinating topic, because I would say that almost any route setter in Colorado who's been setting for, like, let's say a year, is probably more technically proficient than I was like 6 or 7 years into route setting. So that's, like, to me, that's a huge progression, right? And it comes from having facilities that are more advanced, having greater resources, and also, like, previous generations of route setters are now in, like, leadership or mentorship roles. And so, like, the access to information is just so much greater. And so I think that people can pick up route setting much faster than they could in the past. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a huge progression in terms of, like, access to knowledge and materials and mentorship. But as an industry or as a profession, like, it's certainly different than when I started in 2005. Like, I think we all make a little bit more money, but it's not like everyone is a career route setter now. It's not like we've had these, like, pathways to career progression that allow people to stay in the job for 30 years and retire or whatever. So, like, on the macro sense, progression, I think, has been pretty small. But in the micro sense, maybe it's been a lot. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm kind of basing this on, like, having been in the industry for a long time and, like, worked quite hard to make it my career. So I see it as this bigger picture. And that's part of my job, is to see it as a bigger picture. And more, like, behind the scenes, like, professional or industry side of it. Mm-hmm. Progression in terms of, like, what we're able to put on the wall. I mean, that's, like, I think it's inarguable that that has increased, and that setting is, like, across the board more interesting and engaging, and more people are capable of doing cool things in setting than ever before.
Huh. And now, like, if I take my perspective as someone who is a lot newer to the industry, who haven't, seen climbing and been climbing for that long, and I look around me and I still go, okay, we still have that intern who, washed holds and sat with us for 6 months and then decided to quit and go do another job. We still have the setter who's been doing it for 5 years and suddenly hit that burnout point and just also quit and went to, do roofing or something like that. In that sense, I wonder if progression means that we get to keep these people 10 years down the line, that we have gotten to a point in our industry where I'm not going to train somebody for 6 months and then to have them break my heart and leave. Or we're not going to get to a point where the commercial route setter who isn't really traveling and getting, new interesting comps and whatnot get burnt out and hit a wall and just go, sorry, I'm going to go do construction now. But in kind of, when looking at, like, the micro versus macro scale, where do you see the most for improvement, I guess, is my follow-up to that bigger question?
I think it's in lateral progression.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I think that our industry is currently only vertical, right? Like, you start out washing holds, and then maybe you get a set 1 day a week, and then maybe you get to be a full-time setter. And then you stick around, maybe you stick around long enough that the head setter leaves and you get that job. And then maybe you're with a company that has multiple gyms and there's a position above that. And then maybe, like, it only ladders up, and that's only contingent upon people in those roles moving elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think where there's room is, like, laterally. And again, to jokingly use you as the professional face out route setter, what if instead of like waiting for the next person above you in the chain to move on and take their role, you could just travel to different gyms and teach people how to do face out boulders. You could take the skill that you're already very good at and have developed and apply it in a broader sense rather than like waiting for another job that might incorporate skills that are not within your skill set or not anything to do with the experience that has gotten you to that point. And I think that's a very unexplored frontier in our industry.
Two things. One, you're giving me a new idea. I'm now going to start teaching people face out boulders. The second part is that where kind of route setting consulting comes in. Like I've been occasionally asked, be like, hey, like we're opening a gym in somewhere without a big climbing community. We don't know what to do about holds. I'm like, well, I guess I could help you with that. There's definitely more qualified people who can, more qualified than me, I mean, but in the relative sense, then yes, I maybe know a little bit more about that than this owner who's about to open a gym in a place without much of a climbing community. But I'm going on a tangent. This is why my editors hate me.
Well, I think, you said that there might be people who are more qualified to do that than you, and that could be true, but they aren't the ones that are getting asked. And maybe they aren't the ones that have the interest in doing that. And so when you get an opportunity like that, and it's interesting to you, like running forward with it full steam is like creating that opportunity for you to branch out or maybe have some like career progression that's not contingent upon your place of employment's business structure.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think we see that a little bit on like there are a lot of route setters who have got into hold sales and like started their own distribution companies or like work for a distribution company, or maybe they work shaping holds or whatever. But that has kind of been like a natural outlet for people who have maybe reached like the apex of their setting career, or they're like working for a gym career and have found this other outlet. And I think there are many more areas that you could branch out. I just don't know what they are.
This is actually giving me an idea that leads perfectly into my next question, which is content creation. And I know you might not like this, and I personally don't, because I never want to post a video of myself climbing. I don't care if it's the hardest thing I've ever climbed or the coolest thing I've ever set. I don't want to post it. I don't like content, which is funny because I'm hosting a show. But that, to me, is another lateral progression, is to monetize your content, is to, let's say I want to teach people to face out boulder, and I want to make a name for myself teaching people face out boulders. So I need to show the community first, the wider community, that I'm great at setting face out boulders. So I'm going to post a lot of video of me climbing face out boulders in variety of different terrains, and that's how I kind of get my word out there. But I do want to use this as a jumping point to the next question. Let's say I go into work tomorrow and I show you, I'm like, hey, Rylan, look at this on my phone. And it's a cool boulder on an otherwise blank wall, It's a comp move. It has a redirect paddle move that's really high skill, high coordination. And I say, I want to set this right now. What is your first reaction and why?
My first reaction is anyone going to break their legs trying it? And why is because I have to do all the incident reports, and I don't want people to come into our gym and break their legs. But then reaction 1B is, let's go. I think how I would respond to that, I would ask the setter, like, okay, well, like why do you want to do this? Are we setting this at like the extreme end of the difficulty or at the low end? Do you want just the concept, or do we want to like duplicate this just to try to get the context? And then I'm all for fueling that adventure. I think in this example, you said like the wall's blank. So that leads me to believe that like this is an intentional thing. It's going to be a unique boulder. It's not going to be like mixed in with a commercial set. So like we can assume that the context is provided that this will be something extra. And that seems like a great time to explore and like have some like dedicated learning time.
Okay. If I come to you with saying like, I want to set this redirect move because I don't understand paddles and I want to try to understand them. And like, you as a mentor, you'll be like, okay, yeah, we can help you learn the paddle, right? But if I come to you with a different that says, I want to set this because I want to climb it and then post it to my Instagram, does your reaction then change?
think I'd still ask, is anyone going to break their legs? But I think honestly, I'd be a little bit less open to that second example. And I think I would again ask, like, what is the intention? Like, is it the example that you just gave where you're trying to like build this consulting company via like demonstrating your skill set and knowledge, and this is like part of your portfolio? Okay. Is it like, oh, I just want to see how many likes I can get, and like this is a super trendy video and I just want to get like to 1 million YouTube subscribers? I'm like, okay, well, is that really what we need to do on Tuesday? Or can we just like set what our job asks us to do? But I would definitely trend more towards the curmudgeon-y old school climber, unfortunately. So like my knee-jerk reaction to a lot of that is like, just set. Let the people climb it and post their videos. Like, we don't need to also do that.
With this example of like building a reputation online and building a portfolio, do you see benefits of this? Like, let's take the face out, or building a portfolio out of the equation. Let's just say I want to get on high level comp crews and I want to demonstrate to the chiefs out there that I can do paddle moves, that I can do face out moves, that I can not only set them but I can execute them. I see this trend a lot with high level route setters, or let's say mid-level route setters who are trying to move into the high-level position, are posting a lot of videos of themselves doing climbs online. You, as someone who could be hiring for crews, who could be picking the crews, do you take that into account of what kind of content they post online and whether or not that demonstrates their route setting ability or their forerunning ability?
Well, I would have a hard time with this because I don't have any internet presence, so I would be able to watch their videos. But I think
Shucks.
In the principle we're saying though, like, I think that the reputation does matter, right? And whatever pathway it takes, like, that's honestly how people get opportunities, right? Is through networking, right? And so maybe I don't have Instagram, but my friend's like, you got to check this out. Like, this person's like on it. Like, okay, that's like a stamp of approval in my book. And I think that it's harder than ever to get opportunities these days. Just with the requirements that USA Climbing has now for progressing through the levels and like the number of events relative to the qualified people applying for, like, it's super hard. And I think that anything that you can do to get your name out there is beneficial. You just have to like, take that with a grain of salt and like be professional about it.
I think my greatest fear is like posting a video and you looking at it, or you as in like the general you, not specifically you, but going like, well, yeah, sure, you did a paddle, but you can definitely stop on that middle hold.
Oh, I think that all the time anyway. Pretty much anytime people like, check out this move, I'm like, I'm sure you can do something else. And that's, I think by nature, I'm a contrarian. So like naturally I try to do the opposite. But I don't think that negates the benefit of having your name out there, of like building that network of people that could like refer you or use like these videos as like an example or anything. I still believe that a lot of the best route setters I know don't have an online presence, and they still set for high level events and or cool citizens invitational events, and they have zero online presence. It's probably because they got into it back in the day when the community was much smaller, and they've like already established themselves in those networks. They don't need to like continue to keep their name out there. I think it's a thing about industry progressing this fast, and like the span of 20 years, like comps in 20 years ago versus comps now, entirely different things. I, as someone who is kind of slogging through the L2 to 3 pipeline right now, so anyone else there who is also slogging through this bit of the USAC pipeline, we're in it together. Like, the joke I make is, I started setting for USA Climbing in 2014, and if they would have had the same qualifications in place then that they do now, I would probably like just now be getting to level 4.
Nice.
It's like, there's so much to do. It's crazy.
6 QEs as someone who isn't a head route setter, it's kind of hard for a lot of people. All right, I have a kind of a closing question for you that's just looking ahead. Because we talked about progression of the industry and the craft so much. this is going to change. Route setting is going to change. It's going to change in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years. And whether that's in material or in technical craft, it's going to change. Where do you think it's heading? And do you like the direction of the trajectory?
Personally, I think that the direction is going is not my favorite, especially like on the competition scene and very specifically within bouldering. It's moving farther away from things I find are interesting, the movement style and the focus on like coordination, hard to flash things is like moving away from that core element of rock climbing, whatever that means to you. And it's a little disappointing. And I think that like, because of how popular that is and how that influences newer setters wanting to continue in that style, this is not my favorite. That's not really what I want to climb on. And I think that it misses out on a lot of opportunities to really understand like climbing movement. And I think that I'm old and crusty, and it's really important to acknowledge that like at some point, my mentors are probably like, oh, these new kids and what they want to do is like so lame. It's not climbing. Like, this is not like a unique stop in this progression. Like, it's kind of always happens as people like different generations move through their time in the industry. So I also acknowledge that like my personal opinions maybe are becoming less valid if the general population is more in line with the direction that it's going. And then it's like, if I want to keep doing this, then I need to find a way to like rectify those two like divergent things and figure out how I can still be applying myself in this new direction and like learning new styles of setting or like how to like put my own spin on it in a way that's enjoyable to me and progressing my own setting. Because by no means have I like reached the end of the road, you know, and it's like foolish to think that at a certain point, like I've done it. I'm like at the top of my route setting mountain and I can't learn anything new or get any better. So at some point you have to like get out of the way.
Yeah. No, hearing that that perspective from you, I mean, it's not the first time I've heard it from a really high level outsetter. Like, you know, Bikino has said it before that, you know, the style of bouldering is moving away from the style that he likes. He has transitioned into a lot of rope setting nowadays. And as someone who likes rope setting a lot more, I'm like, please, route setting, like rope setting, stay the same. Please, 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 please. Like, I just give me a sport climb. That's really, really hard. That does not have a quarto in the middle of it. And yeah. But hearing you say that, you know, even with your experience level, that you don't see this as the top of the mountain is, to me, really hopeful. Because sometimes I'll look around in an average commercial day and get this like overwhelming sense of, wow, I don't know where to go. I don't know what else I can learn because I feel like there is a wall in front of me. But to know that someone with your amount of experience still feels like there is where like places to improve and to go can kind of broaden that up for someone like me who's only been doing it for 7 years and going like, yes, there is not an end of the road to this, especially if the industry keeps pushing it. There's always going to be something new to learn. Like maybe today is me learning the face out boulder and tomorrow is going to be something else.
Yeah, I think when you were saying that, it just gave me a thought that like, what I think about experience, it's not necessarily that like what I'm going to put on the wall is going to be any better than what anyone else could put on the wall. The experience comes from like being able to identify maybe this fall zone is like not good and I need to make the climb go in a different direction, or the rope's going to definitely cut on these holds, so I need to make sure that it's like, that is experience. Experience is understanding all of those details, like, oh, this start tag is going to get kicked off as soon as someone pulls on the wall. Like, that's experience. The like craft element of it is like maybe this other thing. And I think that's like what I find so fascinating is I work with all these kids and up and comer setters and they're all like really, really good. And when it comes to like actually setting one for one, like they're better than I am for sure. Like their ideas are better. They're executed at like high levels, but they're still putting the start tag in the wrong spot. And they're still not using like a bolt that's long enough. Or like they put the volume on the wall, like 100% the rope is going to cut that. That's where experience comes in.
Huh. I like that perspective too. It's yeah, it's like I'm thinking about all those things in a comp or even in a commercial day that only like a head route setter has told me like, hey, don't tape it that way. I'm like, why? It's perfectly fine. It's pretty. Look at it. Like, no, it's gonna get kicked off in 2 seconds, and then I'm gonna have to go and retape your boulder.
Yeah, you learn a lot from like doing a regional and like having to sit there for like 9 hours and watch 150 kids amplify whatever mistake you made on the wall.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can empathize with that so well. And it's like you watch the first kid come out and fall at draw 5, and you get this feeling. You're like, ooh, that kid's kind of strong. And then you just watch the bottleneck get worse and worse and worse, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you're just sitting there sinking lower and lower into your chair, and just hope that the next time you set a regional, you don't create the same kind of bottleneck.
And that is experience.
Yeah,
that
recognizing the bottleneck before it goes into a comp.
That you get that you will never forget. And then that fuels everything you do going forward. Like, that's actual experience.
I think my closing one is, from my little bits of experience, take the top tag up with you when you're setting and just slam it on there when you're setting, so that at the end of the week, someone doesn't have to go and jug up 15 routes just to put up 15 top tags. Yep.
Always bring a martini bit.
Ooh.
That's another good one. You never, like, there's always like one hold or like something. Just bring the top tag, bring the martini, bring an extra T25. Yeah.
You're going to drop it and start yelling across the gym, hey, who's on the ground? I dropped my T25. All right. I've come up to the end of my questions here. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, this was fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
And that's it for today. Thank you for listening, sharing, and supporting another episode of the Impact Driver podcast. A huge thank you to our guests for joining us and sharing their time and insight, as well as to our sponsors for making these conversations possible. New episodes come out monthly, and you can find past conversations wherever you listen. Be sure to check out the show notes for relevant links and subscribe to CBJ at climbingbusinessjournal.com to never miss a new episode. If you'd like to nominate someone as a future guest, suggest a topic, or reach out with questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me and our producers by emailing info@climbingbusinessjournal.com or by filling out the pitch form in our show notes. The Impact Driver podcast is a production of the Climbing Business Journal. I'm your host, Holly Chen. This episode was edited and produced by myself, Scott Rennick, Joe Robinson, and Megan Cheek, with theme music by Devin Dabney. Thanks again for tuning in.